Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kastuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from the Govardhan Eco Village in beautiful Maharashtra. This is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubh Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to India. We made it to India. Hello. We're here live with about 55 students and friends, and it's been a wonderful day already, Prabhu.
It has.
Yeah. Oh, Kaustubh, you froze a second. I think it's going to work. I think we got
high speed.
We got high speed connections. We had the internet guy come in here, poke around with our thing. Anyway, we made it here. We had a great first day, and we're winding down the day, even though you guys are waking up. And we just did. I think we should let we do a kirtan right before this. So if you're listening to this on Zoom, we're going to let you all in early, and you can join our kirtan and our satsang. Yeah, Kaustubh.
Yes.
What's going on today? Where are we? I'm still lost in space.
Where are we?
What do we got? We got announcements. Where are we?
Geographically? Well, normally we might do announcements at this point.
All right, we have back to recovery group meetings at 1 and 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, and our show time will be at this time, which is 7:30 a.m. Eastern time every day from the Govardhan Eco Village. So while we're here, basically for the month of January.
Great.
Okay, great. Also, I was told to announce Italy. They have a great Italian pilgrimage, but it takes place like in a beautiful ashram in Tuscany. It's a Tuscany Krishna Bhakti ashram, and that's our base. So it's sort of an ashram experience. It's it's not huge, luxurious Tuscany rooms. You're sort of in an ashram, but it's like in a beautiful old castle. This is our third year in a row we're doing it. And if you're interested, go to wotsitaly@gmail.com for more information, or go to the wisdomofthesages.com website and click on events. Right. Okay.
All right. You want to share a little bit about your feelings being here back at the Govardhan?
My feelings about being back here. Well, this is where we started the podcast. We started in 2020 here. And we went, and then me and Kaustubh took a group. We just had a small following of like 100 people, 150 people. And then we took a small group to Jaipur right after this pilgrimage, right after this program. Went to Jaipur and Vrindavan. And Krishna miracle it was, while we were in Jaipur, I got this strange message from Joe Rogan, who was an old friend of mine. And he said, we'd love to have you on our podcast. And so then once we got on the Joe Rogan podcast, I didn't even realize how big he was back then. We just our numbers started spiking. And then the podcast became a number one podcast on Apple Podcasts practically overnight. We were both sort of shocked. And it sort of spread. And then by Krishna's mercy, again, a Krishna miracle, we had an unprecedented earthly lockdown pandemic, which made everybody just hunker down and just go through anxiety and panic. And what am I going to do? Read books or listen to podcasts? and that also like assisted with the podcast and the growth of the podcast. But basically that all started from here, and things have really changed here. I mean, they've really sort of like, the place is really taking much more form, and the plants are grown, and it's really lush, and it's really, I'm quite impressed.
Yeah, earlier today, I heard you say we were just walking down the stairs of this building, actually, but everywhere you turn is like lush and beautiful, and just such a beautiful design. Because when we first came here, right, Radha Swami brought us here. I don't know when it was, like 2000,
3 or
something
something,
like
or
that.
it was like land. It was land,
but
and
it was, and even the land then was, it was kind of like dry, and not.
it was like
A little
Maharashtra. It was like
yeah,
dry, a little
yeah,
dusty, and
dusty, yeah.
sort of barren. And Maharaj was telling us, we're gonna have that Vrindavan forest here. We're gonna have a lodge here and a yoga shala here, and we're gonna take care of the cows over there. And me and Kostuba looked at each other. We're like,
All right, good
well,
luck with
good
that.
luck, Maharaj. It's gonna be a good project. We had no idea.
Well, it's said, I've heard from Guranga Prabhu, who's been very instrumental in helping develop the whole project. He said that when they began here, a lot of the brahmacharis from the Chaupati temple were the first people to come out here and start to develop the project, and none of them really understood why are we out here. It's just
Like, what
everything's
are we-
happening back in the city. We're coming out here. It's like this big, vast, dusty place. It's very hot when it gets hot here.
Mm.
When it rains,
It's very rainy in
it
monsoon
doesn't
season.
stop in the monsoon season. There's nobody out here. What are we doing out here? But the reason I brought this up is we were walking down we're in this building. Last time we were here, they just were about to open this building. Now we're staying in it. It's lovely. You stay here. It has views of the mountains, and it's so nice. And we're walking down the stairs, and each time you walk down the stairs, each level you come to just opens up to a vista that's just absolutely gorgeous. And I just pointed to it, and you said, it's all from the vision of one person, right? All from the vision of one person, that he just had an idea, and he stuck with it, and it's manifested. And this project now is doing so much. Actually, it's actually a very influential project where it's trying to demonstrate, or it is demonstrating, better ways to live. Better ways to live in harmony with nature, in harmony with the earth, and ultimately, like, from a yogic perspective, you could, I don't want to say from like a religious perspective, but like say from a yogic perspective, in harmony with God, like in harmony with that divine force that is the source of everything, and and that everything in the universe is revolving around. Rather than fight it, live in harmony with it. Rather than fight nature, live in harmony with nature. We'll be happier if we do. But someone has to come back and demonstrate it. And I was mentioning to some of the students here, they've just arrived and it's brand new, and you can look around. Oh, it's beautiful. But is it tomorrow that they'll get a tour?
Tomorrow they get a tour. Yeah.
Then you get to see what they're really doing.
Kostuba's got this great point, this idea like working with what God or nature gives us. God gives dry seasons. Then God gives monsoon. What do you do with that? When water gets really dry and then monsoon comes, it just, like when it happens in the desert, same thing. It just rolls off and gets lost. So you develop this water harvesting, water catchment. And so you'll see these big ponds everywhere that they dug out, and it holds the water. And once you hold the water, then you choose where to distribute the water. And it's sort of like this holding of energy, retaining the energy, and then releasing the energy by your selective choice, by a creative design. And you'll see that the whole place, when you walk through this tomorrow and get the tour, it's all been incredibly ingeniously, what's the word I'm looking for, man? Designed or engineered,
Planned,
or curated, almost curated. And another thing, it's one person with a vision, but let's face it, it's not just one person, because one person with a vision can develop a bomb, right? It's one person who worked very difficult in cleaning the consciousness. For example, a drug addicts also can get a vision of what they want in this world. It's usually more drugs, right? But to the degree that I clear up my consciousness, my vision becomes pure as well. So the first thing, the primary thing we work in the yoga system is, how can I clean up my consciousness? And from that, and we were mentioning that this morning, like, I don't exist in a bubble. I don't exist on an island. I'm energy going outward and spreading. I don't have to worry about you getting your act together and them getting their act together and even the government getting their act together. I got to worry about getting my act together. And then I can start visioning things. When I start cleaning up my act, cleaning up my consciousness, then my vision becomes very powerful. And it's not just for my benefit. It's the benefit for so many other people. We see so many people benefit from this project. There's food relief programs. There is engaging the local villages programs. This has become like almost like a tourist destination.
It is a tourist
You know,
destination.
people come all from MP and UP and Maharashtra, all over Maharashtra to visit this place. And it's setting up a very, very high bar in sustainable living, which models for other places around the globe.
Yeah, I like your point a lot about everybody has their own vision, or like everybody has their own idea. Like even say within ISKCON, right? Like within the Hare Krishna movement, everybody's got an opinion about what should be doing, what people should do, and what should be done. But how many people can have a vision and then a big vision, and then it manifests? And like you're saying, I believe it does take a certain purity of consciousness, and it also takes like there's power in like we're reading from Bhagavatam. So, like power comes from austerity. If you look at someone like Radhanath Swami, there's a weird almost like
mystical.
No, I was gonna say it's like a paradox or something that like when you take sannyas, which traditionally was all about like living very austerely, because there's so much respect for that in India, you're kind of showered with all kind of material opulences. People come, they give you money, they give you adoration, they give, it's like kind of the things that you're walking away from, they start to land in your hands. And if you're not very careful, it kind of sucks your spiritual determination and so on. But he's someone that, like, even though he's offered so much opulence, wherever he goes, like he lives with the brahmachari monks, he sleeps on the floor. He's like,
when he visits as a super soul, we give them the nicest room in the house, and I'm like, Maharaj, you didn't sleep in your bed. He goes, I sleep on the floor. I like to sleep on the floor.
Yeah.
He's attracted to the renunciation.
Yeah.
And he takes with one hand and he just gives immediately with the other hand.
And a person with that, not only with that vision, but with that type of renunciation, that consciousness, I'm not doing this for myself. I've got nothing that I'm personally gaining from it. I want to serve.
Yeah.
You see wonderful things can manifest. And so, like I'm saying, on that tour that I think everyone will get the chance to go on tomorrow, you begin to see all the things that they're doing, and it's brilliant. Like you're saying, go. I don't know if you'll all even see, if we'll do this, maybe we can do it later, but you go out into the surrounding villages and you see all the things that this project is doing for the local peoples. Really mind-blowing. But even like here on the property, from how they build the buildings from bricks that they just press themselves from the earth here, how they deal with the sewage, right? So that even that gets kind of like purified and recycled, and
these are like
it comes out with clean water on the other end.
I mean, if we look in nature, they don't have septic systems in nature, right? There's a very natural way that it cycles back into the earth. It fertilizes the earth. When animals build homes and nests, there's not dumpsters going off to the Staten Island dump, which is like the biggest dump you can see from outer space. This is like, to do construction, you need dumpsters. They're learning it's not learning, it's relearning that things people from the past have already done. But in our so-called progress, we left it aside. And when we build things, it creates waste. And then it's funny because I live in the countryside and we go to the dump. And in the dump, they always say, well, you can't dump these fluorescent light bulbs and those batteries. And the funny thing is, like, the consumer is penalized for throwing out the trash. But why not just say, how about if we can't throw it out, we don't make it anymore? If we're not allowed to throw this in the dump, we don't make it. How about creating a world where the people who are manufacturing this stuff, they get penalized for making it? We're just buying it because that's what we know as consumers. Let these people who are making stuff be made that can be used again. It's what you see initially when we first came to India. We noticed that everybody's eating out of cups made of leaves. All the bags, when you purchase something from the store, it's made with either leaf bags or like newspaper bags, and everything would just sort of go in. And then after we eat, we all ate on banana leaves, right? And then after you finish your food, you just walk away, and a cow comes up and eats your plate. It was like, and I remember, being 22 years old, and I was like, this is genius. This is genius. They've cracked the code. But after a while, these habits, they run deep. And after a while, if you're throwing a leaf cup on the ground or a clay cup, remember the first time you had a clay cup in India? Hopefully you'll see some of these in the village. You buy a lassi or buy a lemonade at a thing. They give it to you in a clay cup. And as an American, you're thinking, an artifact. They've given me an artifact. And then you're like, would you like to recycle this clay cup? They said, oh yeah, we will recycle. They throw it on the floor. We're like, what are you doing? But they had thousands of clay cups. We get them from the clay cup man, and they go back to the earth and they make again.
Back into the earth.
So sadly, adopting the American style, they take and they just throw on the ground again. And now they do it with paper. It's heartbreaking. You become so crestfallen witnessing it, and it's almost like they need places like this to re-educate. Not just like what we do is like we store the trash in other places. No.
Hide it.
You got to make things that can break down back in the earth again.
Yeah, and they are using modern technologies, but they're using modern technologies that are, again, in harmony with nature, like the whole sewage system. It's actually a whole natural thing, but it's like modern engineers that have developed it. Where like every drop
gray water, Kastuba.
What are the gray water, brown water? Well, there's both waters, right? But it all goes through that system, and it's passing through
sand.
Rocks. It's passing through like herbs and stuff like that. It's passing through sand, and then it comes out with actually like absolutely like pure clear water on the other end. And that's a technology that like a country like India needs, so badly. Really, the whole world needs. It's just like we found other ways to pump it into the rivers.
Put chemicals in it. Then there's becomes a big flood in New York City, and it breaks through and all goes dumped into the Hudson River. It just happened a few years ago.
It happens all the time. Whenever there's a big storm, it happens. But so in any case, it's really showing on a lot of levels. It's showing a better way to live.
Since we've been kids, it actually appears like we're in a golden age. It actually appears like things are rapidly transforming, and sometimes things, when they transform, it goes into two different directions. Things have definitely gotten darker, and things have gotten lighter. Just the information about diet, about healing yourself, about meditational practices, about just things that were a little bit more mysterious or enigmatic are now coming to the surface due to an information age. In the same way, things are worse than ever. The foods are worse than ever. Farming is worse than ever. What they're doing to the earth is worse than ever. But they're polarizing tremendously, and it appears like if you were sitting on a fence before, you got to start making some serious choices. And there's definitely light. There's a bright light rising. And I feel like this is part of it. I feel like this whole training we're doing here is part of it. I feel like all the little things. I feel like this podcast is part of it.
All right.
Well, all right.
Then
let's get it started. Any other interesting news
on any topic at all?
Just gab for a while. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate. Oh, we already did that one. Stop it. Stop the mantra. We did that mantra. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraya. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our great means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki, by regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Midatam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Mara, where are we?
Starting Canto 5.
You don't know where we are?
Oh, we're
Yeah.
starting Canto 5 today. This is exciting.
Canto 5, Chapter 1,
Okay.
Text 1. So maybe we can just mention a few
Sure.
words about what's happening here, right? So again, if you ever want to see, if you're following the podcast and you're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and you want to understand it better, one thing you could do, I think if you just Google Srimad Bhagavatam family tree, I think you'll get like a chart.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's actually on our website also. We have a picture of it on our website. It's yours with me.
You ever been to our website, Kastuba?
Okay. It's been a while, actually. So, and there it's showing like, again, what is Srimad? Where is it taking place? How is it taking place? There was one king, Parikshit. He was the grandson of Arjuna from the Bhagavad Gita. He was cursed to die in 7 days. He says, that's okay. I accept that. I can handle that. I just want to use the time as best as I can. He goes to the riverbank. He sits down. There's a gathering of sages because he's so respected, right? He's respected by the people, but he's also respected by the sages. He's respected by the yogis because of he's such a noble person. And so they've all gathered, and he's waiting for the right person to inquire from. Who should I speak with? And then out of nowhere
comes a naked 16-year-old walking through with his hair down, looking like from another, looks like he's from another land, another world. Yeah. But he's just, when people see him, they realize this is not an ordinary person. And people come, they follow him, they sit with him. Even higher beings, they say, came just to listen to him speak. And this was Sukadeva Goswami.
He wandered in there. He was being followed by children and like just villagers because they were just looking at him and say, who is this person? He comes, and the King Parikshit, he seats him. He gives him a proper seat, elevated seat. Everybody's gathered around. Here, this was a merit-based kind of operation, right? In other words, there were people that were older than him, senior to him and so on, but everyone had the humility and to say, we want to hear from him.
They understood his spiritual stature, even though he was he was an emperor. Parikshit was an emperor, and he sat at the feet of a naked 16-year-old boy with dreadlocks. Yeah. Right? Right. So it was over hierarchy of status of the material realm, and that was just down to your spiritual merit, and everybody fully accepted and just shut up and wanted to hear and let Parikshit inquire. And there's this big reoccurring theme that's happening in the Bhagavatam, starting with this really opening story, which is Parikshit's days are numbered. He's got 7 days to live, and he doesn't want to waste any time. Now we're like, well, it's good for him. Good. You shouldn't waste time. You can't buy time back. Time's valuable. Guess what? You're Parikshit. You're about to die. Maybe not in 7 days, maybe in 7 years, maybe in 70 years, but it's finite number of time. And when we hear about these stories, it's not for us to sit back in an armchair and say, oh, what an interesting story. It's your story. It's your story, how your days are numbered. What are we doing with our lives? How can I not waste time? How can I not just turn off, stick my head in the sand? This is what materialists are claiming spiritualists are doing constantly. They're just living in some fantasy that when they die, they'll go to some end, they're trying to escape reality. This is reality. You want reality? You're about to die. At any moment, keep it at the forefront of your mind. And then act accordingly. Ask these questions to people you respect in the same way Prickett did. What is the duty of a person about to die? Like, what am I supposed to do now? I'm about to die. I got 7 days to live. What's the most important thing for me to do? The entire Bhagavatam, the 18,000 verses of the Bhagavatam are all answering this question.
Okay, so the 16-year-old say he knows he's speaking to a king. He knows he's speaking to someone that's come down in a lineage that goes way, way, way back, and it's like a lineage of like famous legends, like legendary kings. Many of them who served as his role models, right? Or people that he's heard about growing up. He was trained to be a leader in his youth, and the nobility, or you can say like and when I say nobility, it's a nobility that's also like a yogic nobility that these previous rulers had. He's been trained in it. They've been listed as the examples. So when Sukadev, the 16-year-old, is speaking to him, he has a lot to say, but he's going to explain it all within the context of his predecessors, of Purkett's predecessors.
India is a very unique culture, much different than growing up in America. A lot of us couldn't care less what our predecessors said. A lot of us, we're not so inspired oftentimes by the lives our parents or grandparents led. I had trauma in childhood. My father was an alcoholic. I'm not going to listen to what he said, or not interested in I didn't even know my great-grandfather. But in India, they act in a type of way that they want to impress their parents and serve their parents. And their parents act in a way where they wanted to serve their parents. And if you talk to Indians and how they live, there's almost like a nobility that they want to carry on to almost to serve the family. On their
sense of
altar,
responsibility.
they keep pictures of their family. If you talk to Janeswara Pareshri or Hari Priya, who's the lady who lives here and directs this place, she'll say, oh, yes. I said, how did you get into bhakti? She goes, how did I get into bhakti? My grandfather's sincere prayers for me. My grandfather got me into bhakti. He would show me from childhood. And to this day, these impressions left in their consciousness of, I'm not living just for me. We walk around with these slogans like, just do it. Like, let go of anything, any reactions, just do what you want to do. No, we act because we know our acts are going to affect everybody around me. My positive actions will affect people in a positive way. The negative actions will affect people in a negative way. I'm not acting for me. I'm also acting on behalf of my parents who have loved me, my grandparents who have loved me. I'm going to act on behalf of my whole lineage that I've never met. And this is an incredible thing because our activities today, right? Don't you think the way you behave today is going to affect how you raise your children and who your children will look up to? So we think of ourselves in much bigger than a single unit. We think of ourselves as our activities have a huge ripple effect on everyone around us, including our predecessors and ancestors. Those are our predecessors. Offspring.
Followers.
Offspring. Or do humans have offspring or just animals? We have offspring too, right? Okay. It's going to affect my predecessors and my puppies.
Progeny.
And my progeny. Thank you. All my puppies will be affected by my activities. Okay. All right.
So he in his canto just kind of builds up to the moment where Sukadeva Goswami shows up. So we hear about the birth of Parikshit. We hear about a bit about what he goes through and his immediate predecessors had gone through involving his birth. We hear about how he handles himself as a king. And then we hear how he gets cursed. And then he gets cursed and he goes to the bank of the river and he's waiting, who am I going to inquire from? And then Shukadeva Goswami shows up, and that's the end of the first canto. So the second canto begins with some initial questions. And when we get to the third canto, we're starting to go down the family trees, right? And so we hear about from Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma is born. We hear about that in the second canto. And from Lord Brahma is born Swayambhuva Manu, right? One of his sons. Swayambhuva Manu is incredibly responsible, incredibly influential, early universal being. And he has 5 children, 3 daughters and 2 sons. So in the third canto, we're hearing about the lineages that are coming down from his daughters. Born into the, we hear about, you remember the, Mara?
Quiz
Or
Mara,
put you
don't
on the
quiz
hot
me.
seat? Do you know the daughters? They all rhyme. Right? There's Devahuti, there's Akuti, and there's Prashuti, right? Okay. And so from Devahuti is born an incarnation of Lord Vishnu, right? Kapila Dev. And so much of the third canto is their conversations. These are fascinating conversations on yoga and ultimately on bhakti yoga. But we also heard about Diti and Aditi, right? Who come down from Prashuti, to granddaughters or maybe great granddaughters or so. And from them, from one of them comes the lineage of the asuras or the demons, and from the other comes the lineage of suras, the demigods, right? So third canto is covering a lot of the family tree coming down from the daughters of Swayambhuva Manu. The fourth canto was from one of the sons, Uttanapad, and we were speaking about that on the previous shows, right? We layer like about 5 different layers of kings we heard. Ended with the Prachetas. And after the Prachetas walked away from everything, there was kind of like in that branch of the tree, they didn't have anyone able to follow them up. So to find the next ruler, you had to go to the next branch, the brother of Uttanapad named Priyavrata. And so the fifth canto is going to deal with this branch. We're going to hear about Priyavrata. We're going to hear about his descendants, which include Rishabdev, who becomes a really important figure in you could even say in the religious history of India, because they say that the Jain
tradition came from
tradition stemmed from Rishabdev. And then we hear about Bharat. And the story of Bharat is really fascinating because we're not going to hear about just one lifetime. We're going to hear about 3 of his lifetimes. Right? We're going to hear about him, how he ruled as a king, the depth of when he walks away from the kingdom, the depths of his spiritual pursuits, but he makes a mistake. He gets born again in the body of
a deer.
Then he gets, but as a deer, he has like the same consciousness that he had as a human. He knows why he got born as a deer, where he went wrong, where he wants to go next, who to hang out with as a deer. And then he takes birth again as a human, and he has a real strong determination to not get caught up in the things of this world. So he kind of poses himself as a person that's kind of like mentally disabled, maybe, I suppose you could say. And then we hear about more stories about him. So that's like the first half of the fifth canto, and then it goes into the cosmology. So we'll hear about all that, but we start with hearing about Maharaj Priyavrata.
And by the way, on a side note, the Bhagavatam is not meant to be read as a storybook. It's meant to be read as something that when we hear the knowledge, we apply it to our life. And we live in such a way that we can imbibe it, take it in, and apply it. So it's especially great to hear this while you're here I'm talking to the people doing the trainings here at the Govardhan Eco Village. Also good, of course, everyone listening to it, that this is meant, it's like watching a snowboard video, an instructional snowboard video. It's good, but now you got to go out and snowboard. You got to practice. Just watching the videos, you're not going to get better. You got to if you want to get better in these spiritual practices, you hear it and then you try it on yourself. Okay, how does it work? And then you start to reflect on that. And that's how these books are meant to be studied. Not just like we're reading interesting stories, hearing interesting quotes. Oh, I can quote that. That'll be a good quote. No, we don't your quote. We want you to learn it and live it, and then end up when you get so filled with something joyous, then you want to give it away as well. Okay. Text 1.
Yep.
King Cricket inquired from Sukadev Goswami, "O great sage, why did King Priyavrata, who was a great self-realized devotee of the Lord, remain in household life, which is the root cause of bondage of karma, fruit of activities, and which defeats the mission of human life?" I love this. How, first of all, it's really paints the picture of the human spirit's existence, right? We get tied up in almost like once we fall in love in the material world, it's so easy to get lost in a maze and bounced around. Sometimes really, sometimes people have been really through tough relationships, tough marriages, tough dealing with kids, some good fortune, then meets bad fortune, and you could really get lost. And what I like about the Vedic paradigm is there's always um, accepted that we're in a maze, but there's always a goal. There's always an end point. There's always a touchdown where we're going to go with, where are we going with this whole game? And there's an end point, and that's liberation of the self. They accept, okay, we're going to get married, we're going to fall in love, we're going to have a business, we're going to have kids. But what's the end game? What's the why behind why I'm working so hard? What's the why that I'm getting married? What's the why I'm raising a family? What's the why I'm working out? What's the why to be healthy in the first place? What is the why behind art? And when I was growing up, there was this whole thing about being cultured. You should, go to museums and study art and stuff. And I'd always ask my mom, why? Why do I have to listen to classical music? Why is that good for me? Well, it's just good to know. Why?
Was that some kind of profound inquiry, or did you just?
I just wanted to know the why. It was profound. I think. Is it just because it's just so I can tell everybody I know this artist or this composer, etc.? What's the why behind it? So the Vedic culture accepts music, art, culture, dance, literature, recreation, cooking, etc. But there's a why behind it all. And here it frames it out really why. So why is this person entering household life, which can be great bondage and can actually defeat the mission of human life? When you hear a lot of these sacred stories about people who are just like, I'm walking right to the Himalayas. And now it's going to explain how the balance can be done, how to be in this world, but not of this world.
Yeah. I was just speaking how there was this family tree branch of rulers coming down from Uttanapad, his sons, grandsons, etc., etc. Meanwhile, Uttanapad's brother Priyavrata, he hasn't been called upon. He's the younger brother, and he hasn't been called upon to rule. He's just doing meditation, right? It's like, okay, if I don't have to take on all of this worldly responsibility, then I can just go deep into spiritual practices. But now that there's a gap, then he's being approached. We need you. And so what the beginning of this chapter deals about is the tension that he's feeling like, do I really have to do this? Now, when we hear this, it can sound a little strange, like it's saying that he had to enter into household life, and household life is the root cause of bondage, right? Which can defeat the mission of human life. So does that mean we're not supposed to have families? And this is what happens in the Bhagavatam is really important, because it's going to help us make sense of these vast body of teachings. If you go to earlier teachings, they're going to speak a lot about how the very nature of family life expands your material entanglement, right? Once you're married, you have to make money. You have to go out, that means you have to enter the business world. When you enter the business world, it's going to be followed by different types of anxiety. If you make lots of money, you may get lost in that. If you're not making lots of money, you may get lost in anxiety. You're up one day, you're down the next, and you've entered into that. Better for spiritual life to not even get involved, right? To just live simply. And so especially sex and money, are so central to household life. And affection, like affection for children, in a sense, one can get lost in that too. Kind of Jnana yogic perspective that this question is asked. You know, why if he had this whole spiritual thing going on, if he had peace of mind and the freedom to go deeper and deeper within, why would he walk away from that and enter into like a whole world of politics? And you know, anybody that's ever had some kind of leadership role, you know, in this world, they know it's like it's full of complications and anxieties and rivalries and you know, why would he enter
I
into
think it's
that?
sort of
That's
like
the
this
nature of the question.
generation too is sort of getting that to a certain point, and people are getting the tiny house movement is growing. And then you have people who are like, I've been working in finance for years and now I'm just cashing out and I'm moving to Costa Rica and I'm gonna, you know, live. I do want to just surf and do what I've always wanted to do, but
Yeah.
you know, but still the anxiety of really digging into material existence, it becomes very evident. And even if we do say, okay, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to live a simpler life, once we get there, we're going to get bored unless there's some we actually need a map of what to do. And that's what the Vedic teachings are. It's a map of what to do. So how we can work in this world and actually not be tricked by the same old tricks that generations have been tricked before us. It's not like your parents and grandparents and great grandparents. A lot of times they were the same illusions would come up again and again. And this is giving us a little bit of insight and framing out how a human life should go. And here we are seeing a person at their end of their life asking these questions. And we're hearing stories of other people going through the same search.
Yeah, you imagine he's the you know he's asking the question like saying like he just walked away and he knows he's only got 7 days, but he's free for the first time in his life, right? Mars Parikit. For the first time in his life, he's not. People aren't on his
Right.
door with problems. He's got 7 days. It must feel like you know a relief to him in one sense. Why would this person that doesn't have to do it get involved and get entangled? And again, what Bhagavatam does, it's very mission. What so many of these other important texts don't do is it's gonna clarify that from the Jnanic point of view, like say from the view that you'll get from the Upanishads, this is a very valid question. Why would someone who's on the path to liberation walk away from it and walk back into material entanglement? It's nothing but negative. It's just a total disadvantage. What's going to be explained is from the bhakti perspective, it doesn't have to be. From the perspective of bhakti, you can enter into family life, you can enter into political life, you can enter into business life, but you're doing it with a whole different perspective, a whole different attitude, a whole different intention. You're doing it with a pure intention, and that makes all the difference. So even the work in that realm becomes yoga, and in some ways it can be even a more effective path to yoga. So that'll start to come out here.
Okay. Text 2. Devotees are certainly liberated persons. Therefore, O greatest of the Brahmanas, they cannot possibly be absorbed in family affairs. Elevated Mahatmas, right? A Mahatma is a great soul, who have taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are fully satiated by the shade of those lotus feet. This little poetic embellishment. Their consciousness cannot be possibly attached to family members, right? The king continued.
And let's
Sure.
just clarify that a little bit too. What the way that I understand that is, it's not saying that they hate their family, but what it's saying is the vision of the liberated person is that the entire universe is my family, right? I love everyone. Whereas the vision of the person that hasn't achieved that state of consciousness, they're attached to their own family, and they don't have any particular interest in other people, right? My family is more important to me than anybody else. The yogis, their consciousness and their affection has expanded. So in once you could in a sense rephrase this and say their here it says their consciousness cannot possibly become attached to family members. Maybe you could even like to the exclusion of others. Right.
There's also a blend of illusion that happens when you're thinking, I am the controller of their destiny. Every parent's experienced this. I want my child to do this, but then they choose this. I want my child to be healthy, but then they get diseased or sick. I want my child to take on this profession, go to university, and then they completely dropped out. They're go to rainbow gatherings or whatever they do. So there's this concept that I have control of my children, control of my spouse, control of my family, and that's a blended illusion. And what Mars Prickett was at this point of, Kostuba said earlier, this is the first time in his life he's had no responsibility to anybody. If you can imagine that. A lot of times we're growing up, we have responsibility to our parents, to our siblings, to our school teachers, to our professors, to our girlfriend or boyfriend. I've got respect. Then I got responsibilities to my wife. Then we get or our husband. Then we got responsibility for our children. And it's an ongoing type of anxiety. And this point of his life, and this is actually what we're trying to cultivate, us, while we're in relationship, while we have children, that I have responsibilities of this world, but I have a bigger responsibility as well. I have a responsibility with a capital R. This reminds me of when, this whole summer, our good friend, student, etc., Gopal Chandra, was leaving his body. And every day we'd read to him. He had cancer, and you have to bring him. And I was talking to the chaplains, Ganesham, and they were giving me advice. I was like, what do I say? I've never coached anyone out of their body. And they said, this is a very common thing. You have to get them out of the fear that they're in their mind. Like, what's going to happen to me? What am I going to go through? Lamenting over their past, fearing what's going to happen to their family members and children. Bring them back to the present moment. And that's where they can find some peace. I was thinking, well, that's what we're trying to do all the time. We say, be here now. But it's really true. We have to sort of like coach them out of, you have no more. And I had to actually say this, and it was actually really true. Gopal, you have no more debts. You don't owe anybody anything. You can't do anything at this point. You've served your wife. You've served your children. You've served your family. You've served your parents. Now you have one capital R responsibility to do. You have to really reconnect with divinity. That's your real responsibility now. And if we can remember that while we're healthy, while we're strong, while we have relationships, while we have family, then we'll be successful as we are passengers in this world. We're not here permanently. We're passengers just cruising through. Like you're in a train and you're going, you go through a village. That's where we are in this world. We're just cruising through a village. Don't set up shop. Right? Imagine if I go to a hotel and I'm starting to say, I would think this room would look better in pink. And I just go out to Sherwin-Williams and buy some paint and repaint the foolish, right? What would make sense? I understand this is a hotel. I'm just passing through. I got a new one tomorrow. What's the most effective use of my time where I'm not going to waste time, waste resources, drag anybody down? This is where we're going with this whole book. Text 5:4. Thank you. The king continued, "O great Brahmana, this is my great doubt. How is it possible for a person like King Priyavrata, who is so attached to his wife and his children and his home, to achieve the topmost infallible perfection in Krishna consciousness?" This is the mystery of life. This is the secrets of the universe. You want the secrets of the universe? You want those buried treasures? They're right here. It's about to fall in your lap. How do you be in this world, but not of this world? Keep going, Kostuba.
Sure.
Sukadeva Goswami said, "What you have said is correct. The glories of the personality of Godhead, who is praised in eloquent transcendental verses by such exalted personalities as Brahma, are very pleasing to great devotees and liberated persons. One who is attached to the nectarian honey of the Lord's lotus feet, and whose mind is always absorbed in his glories, may sometimes be checked by some impediment, but still never gives up the exalted position he has acquired." Sukadeva Goswami continues, My dear king, Prince Priyavrata was a great devotee because he sought the lotus feet of Narada, his guru, his teacher, right? And thus achieved the highest perfection in transcendental knowledge. With advanced knowledge, he always engaged in discussing spiritual subjects and did not divert his attention to anything else. The prince's father then asked him to take charge of ruling the world. He tried to convince Priyavrata that this was his duty, as indicated in the revealed scriptures. Prince Priyavrata, however, was continuously practicing bhakti yoga by constantly remembering the personality of Godhead, thus engaging all his senses in the service of the Lord. Therefore, although the order of his father could not be rejected, the prince did not welcome it. Thus, he very conscientiously raised the question of whether he might be diverted from his devotional service by accepting the responsibilities of ruling the world. Sukadeva Goswami continued, the first created being and the most powerful demigod in the universe is Lord Brahma, who is always responsible for developing universal affairs. Born directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he dedicates his activities to the welfare of the entire universe, for he knows the purpose of the universal creation. This supremely powerful Lord Brahma, accompanied by his associates and the personified Vedas, left his own abode in the highest planetary system and descended to the place of Prince Priyavrata's meditation.
So Priyavrata, he's like an accomplished yogi. He's incredibly learned. He's, stone cold sober. and his father is asking him, please come and leave your meditations and come and take up all this material responsibility. And he's hesitant. So they're bringing in Brahma. Right, they're going to grandfather actually, right? And but even Brahma's not coming alone. It says he's coming accompanied by his associates and the personified Vedas, right? Which aren't like a bunch of books that talk. It's like a
books.
SpongeBob kind of, but it's like all these sages.
SpongeBob books.
It's like-
Hare Krishna. Hare
it's
Krishna,
like-
Kastuba.
Well, in other
I
words,
understand
when we say what are the personified Vedas, it's human beings that are embodiments of these Vedas and speak these ancient teachings. So now what's he going to do? It's like you got all the sages are coming down from the higher planets and they're saying, we need you.
They're having an intervention with the prince.
Yeah.
You
We
know.
knew, but they're not just going to say you need to do it and you just have to bite the bullet and do it. They're going to explain that if you do this as devotion, it will not it won't be an entanglement. It will actually lead to liberation.
It's another loud statement that when there are forks in the road of our life, we need good advice. Whenever I have big decisions to make, I never rely on myself. People say, just follow your heart. I got to be careful about that because it gets blended with my own personal desires. Sometimes I pray, oh God, please do not give me what I desire because I desire sometimes things aren't beneficial for me. It's good to have good counsel, good friends, good teachers. You can say, I'm feeling very strongly attached to this idea. What do you think? It's good to be honest enough with yourself that you can ask other people that you trust what they think of the same situation, especially when it comes to big decisions in our lives. And this is what's about to happen. Prince Priyavrata had an idea. And his idea was, I'm just going to stay where I am. And he had counsel that said, we got a better plan. There's a better plan for you.
I think that'll do it for today.
Is that?
That'll do it for today.
That's it?
Yep.
What the heck? Mara, did you get any good little takeaways today? Little takeaway goodies, we call them?
We don't call them that. We just call them takeaways. But yeah, I got some good stuff here. Let's see. Power comes from austerity.
It
Okay,
does.
it's goody.
Purify your mind for a vision connected to divinity. Take with one hand and give simultaneously.
Okay.
This is before we even started.
Yeah.
Stop manufacturing what we can't throw away.
Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our days are numbered like Maharaj Prickett.
Our days are numbered.
The reality.
How about just a T-shirt that says "Our days are numbered"?
I got some
And
more
then go like
t-shirts too.
3, 2, 4.
The reality is we're about to die.
How about a T-shirt that says "The reality is we're about to die"? And the back it could say, "What you gonna do?"
I got another t-shirt here for you. Don't just do it.
Don't just do it. I'd wear that. Just do it. It's like, what? I'd be arrested many times over if I just did it a few times.
All right.
If I followed that advice.
This one could be a tattoo. Know your why.
Know your
Know
why.
your why. Okay, I get that. I like that. I tattoo that.
All right. Let's see. Remember our capital R responsibility while we're healthy.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
Not a t-shirt, but it's good.
Not a
Capital
T-shirt. I wouldn't
R?
wear that. But I like it.
Seek good counsel when we're at a fork in the road.
Seek good counsel.
And Srimad Bhagavatam clarifies everything.
Srimad Bhagavatam clarifies everything. A key. Jai. Thanks everybody for joining us live. We're going to do this every day at the Govardhan Eco Village. We're live at 7:30 a.m. New York time. Please come join us. We got some beautiful people here. Every day, even on weekends. We're not using this camera? Oh, forget it. Remember the Italy retreat is happening. Go to WOTSItaly@gmail.com to inquire, but you got to leave a deposit or else we can't hold your spot. But it will sell out. So jump on board that. Thanks, everybody, for joining us live on Zoom. Go to Apple Podcast and leave your story. Give us a review. Give us 5 stars. Do that. And what else do I want to say? Wisdom Sages, a community-supported podcast. If you like what we're doing, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. Contribute anything you like to keep our boat floating. We really love what we do. We get great pleasure out of it. And we have a beautiful community. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Haribo.